I can't forget to do that. All right. We should be recording. We should be up. Thank you guys so much for being patient while I'm figuring this out. Zoom meetings is an entirely new beast for me, and I'm not super technologically savvy, but we're gonna do our best. Okay, so welcome to Novena's class. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to share this with you guys. We're gonna go over lots of things here. I have my notes. I have my LaCroix. We're ready. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to kind of go over real quick was a lot of questions that I was not expecting to get. I was happy that people are thinking about this, but also I want to kind of clear it up for a little bit. A lot of folks were concerned that the use of Novena magic posed an issue of cultural appropriation, which in my opinion it does not, because the use of novenas at its root and origin is Catholic, which was brought over by European settlers when they came to the Americas. So essentially, this is not on the danger zone list for cultural appropriation. Yes, this does happen a lot in Mexican culture. Mexican folks use a lot of novenas, but that's mostly because they are Catholic and it's not so much specifically a Mexican cultural thing. So I don't want you guys to be concerned about that so much. And I just wanted to address that right out of the chute because I had so many people who were concerned about it, and I love that you guys are thinking that way, but no worries, don't feel worried about it. So we just went into a little bit about the origin. This is essentially a Catholic practice using novena candles. And when I talk about a novena candle, I'm talking about these ones here, the ones that come in the glass jars. And these are called all kinds of different things. They'll be called glass candles, they'll be called jar candles. I tend to not call them jar candles so much because then people think that that you mean like the like Yankee candle ones that you get every like holiday or like every Mother's Day, someone's gonna give you one. That's not what we're talking about, not quite, though I'm sure you could probably use those for magic, but we're gonna be talking about these ones today. So the word novena candle, or the word novena, technically means 9, meaning that these were allegedly supposed to burn for 9 days. You'll also hear them called 7-day candles as well for the same reason. And as wonderful as that is, most of these usually only burn for about 3 to 5 days. I have never had one go 9 days. I have had them go 7 days before. And depending on your burn, they may burn faster or slower. And we'll talk about what that may or may not mean later. So it's a little bit of a misnomer to call it a novena because, again, it's not going to be going 9 days. Or 7 usually, but it's something that we burn for multiple days in a row. Now, I always have to stop and search for my words. This is normal. So when working with a novena candle versus doing a regular candle spell, kind of like what I have going on up here on my altar above, is that a novena candle, you're going to want to use this when you're looking for work that's going to be long-term lasting and on occasionally slow. And we can do this with regular candles as well, where you'll burn a candle a little bit each day so that it takes several days to burn to go through it in order to kind of create a long-term lasting effect. But that's also the same idea with a novena candle, is we're going to want to work on this over time to get the results that we're wanting. With these, it's easy to think, though, that that means that these won't have direct or I'm feeling like the word I want to use is explosive, but that seems a little intense. When we're using like a single candle spell or like a one-time sit down, we're going to burn these candles for like 2 hours and then they're going to be done kind of a spell, that tends to be more of like a flash in the pan and more of a kaboom, you get your manifestation or whatever you need to be done, whereas these tend to be slower, longer term. However, you can still use these for impactful work that is immediate as well. I do blockbuster work using Novena candles as well, and it still works quickly, and it still has a direct impact versus something that's going to be a little bit slower. If I'm not making sense, let me know in the chat, because sometimes this stuff makes sense in my head, but then verbalizing it gets weird. So yeah, so you're gonna wanna use a Novena candle when you're looking for more long-term work. This is a little bit more like using like a bulldozer for most things instead of like a stick of dynamite. However, if you wanna use it like a stick of dynamite, it can. So these are really versatile. You can use them for both, is I guess what I'm trying to say here. Now, there are 2 to 3 major types of novenas. You have your blank ones, which just come like this. It's a regular candle here. And then we also have your saints novenas that show up like so, with your particular saint on them. And then you also have intention novenas, which come in things like your usual ones are like Chuparosa, which is what this one is. You also have Lost Stay Away, which we're going to be working with a little bit later. You also have Jinx Removing. So those are kind of the differences. You'll either have one that's going to be blank, you'll have one that will have a saint, or you'll have one that's for a specific intention. Those are going to be the 3 ones that you find. Now, if you are having trouble finding either a saint or a intention one, you can take a blank one and then just decorate it yourself. So this is one that I have made for psychic work. So don't be afraid to grab some paint. You can use like nail polish. I use glass markers. You can use all kinds of stuff on these. Sharpies will also write on glass as well. So you can use all kinds of stuff to decorate these if you want to make your own. So don't feel like you are limited to just what your local store has to sell. Now, some of the differences between using something like an intention candle and a saint candle is going to be mostly a matter of function. So let's say I needed to do blockbuster work. I could either use a blockbuster intention candle, one that says blockbuster on it, or I can make my own one that says blockbuster on it, which is very helpful. Or I can use a St. Barbara candle. That's who this is here. This is St. Barbara. She is patron saint of demolitions, explosions, dynamite, lightning strikes, things like that. Because of her story, she was struck by lightning. There was a big explosion. So she is patron saint of all of those things. So for the purposes of a blockbuster, I would petition St. Barbara for that. However, I could also just use a blockbuster candle. Now, the way that they work is ever so slightly different, because it truly is the difference between doing it yourself or asking somebody to do it for you. If you have a relationship with St. Barbara, she might be very happy to go in there and bust that through with you. If you haven't really hung out with St. Barbara and you don't want to ask her a favor, just go for the intention candle. You can also use saint candles to honor and build relationships with saints, and that's something that's specific to the saint candles, because I can't really, make a relationship with come to me, because come to me is not a thing. However, St. Barbara is a spirit that I can get to know, so I can burn this to honor her and to maybe evoke her presence, or just simply to let her know that she is somebody that I would like to work with without actually casting spell work. So if you're just looking to honor a saint, you can just use the saint's candle, or each one of them has a specific sort of wheelhouse that they're good for. Like if I was looking for protection, I would use Saint Michael, or if I needed a miracle, I would use a Saint Jude. So things like that. So you can use saints candles, especially if you are familiar with the saint already, for both spell work and for honoring them at the same time. So they're a little bit more versatile. Now, if you need something big and you're not sure that you can do it on your own with an intention candle, I would recommend doing a saint one, just because they are more apt to help you with of course, divine help. Now, the function of saints really depends on who you ask. If you ask a strict Catholic person, they will tell you that when you ask a saint for help, the saint then will act as a liaison between you and God. So according to Catholic tradition, the saint themselves won't actually be helping you, but the saint will go and ask God to help you on your behalf, with the idea being that that they kind of have an in with God. They either knew Jesus or somebody, they're in the club, and are going to have more pull. I'm not completely convinced that's how that works, because there have been more than one occasion where saints have appeared to people and actively helped on their own. But I think Catholicism likes to shy away from that, because then that starts to get into the territory of polytheism, or more than one thing that can help or intercede that isn't specifically God, and that freaks them out. So they will say that if you ask Saint Barbara for help, she will pray for you, and then hopefully God will grant it. That's just one way of thinking about it. However it makes sense in your brain is going to be how it makes sense in your brain. Am I making sense at all? Throw up a little yes in the comment in the chat if you're following me. Excellent. Thank you, Carol. Okay, making sense. I'm looking at my notes here. Okay, so let's go over the types of intention candles now that we have talked about the saints a little bit. So types of intention. So we have things like love. And for those ones, we'll see things like Chuparosa candle here is a really popular one for love work. Oh, one second. Okay, so Sarah is asking if you're not Catholic, can you still work with saints? In my opinion, yes. And let me think. Okay. So yes, you can work with saints. As long as we're talking about the actual saints themselves. Now, there's a lot of, I guess there's a handful of religions who use the saints as a figurehead for a different spirit, specifically African spirits. And that kind of gets into a weird territory. But as long as, so for instance, if we come back to Saint Barbara is used in Santeria as well, but it's a disguise for a spirit known as Shango. And so when they're praying to Saint Barbara, they're actually talking about Shango. And if that is what you're doing, then we should maybe talk more to a Santeria person and figure out how that's going to be working. But if you're talking to Saint Barbara as Saint Barbara and that's what you mean, I feel like it's okay. Even if you're not Catholic, because whenever we get into the area of Christianity and Christian religion, they're very big on everybody needs to do it the way that we need to do it. So it makes it really easy to not appropriate, because they're like, yes, you should be doing it this way anyway. So feel free to work with the saints if you're not Catholic. And that's my opinion. But somebody may feel different, but as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty safe. Is that making sense? Awesome. Okay. So working back into the love candles. So some of the most common ones you're going to see, the first one is going to be Chuparosa. Chuparosa roughly translates to hummingbird. It technically means rose sucker, but I mean, you know, you get it. And what Chuparosa is often used for is for either bringing in a new love or to heal a love that is already in progress that has some issues. So say, you know, you and your significant other are having some issues, you're going through some tough times, some bad stuff has happened, you can use a Chuparosa candle, the idea being that the hummingbird can come in and, you know, drink or pull something out of the flower without disturbing it. The idea that the hummingbird might be able to come in and kind of like suck that negativity out of the relationship without harming everything you've already built. The hummingbird magic tends to be really super gentle. I like this one to work on for most love work, just because it's really not harsh, it's not dominating. It's a very pure form of love work, as opposed to something like a Come To Me or a Venami candle. Here you can see she's like, I got you. So these ones are going to be a little more intense. This is for a specific target that you are wanting to come to you, or create a situation where you'll be running into them a lot, to kind of give you that ability to talk to them, flirt with them, things like that. Is to create a situation where you are both together in the same place. So we have the love candles. We also have things like a gallina negra. This is black hen, and a jinx remover. Both of these can be used for uncrossing work to remove jinxes, hexes, curses, things like that. You run across these a lot. They're often black, but you can also find them in white as well. A lot of these come in many different colors. Some of the colors don't always make sense, but if it makes sense for your work, or if it makes sense in your head, feel free to go for those ones. You also have things like goal-oriented work. So you have like an abre camino, which means road opener, or it means open road, but same thing. And then I also have one here that I have made for prosperity. You can find money ones, work ones, job ones to bring in clients as well, that you can work with. We also have ones that are law and justice related. So we have Just Judge. This one is used to try and get a judge in a court case on your side. You can also use these, because everything has a flip side. You can also use these if somebody has done something very wrong, that the judge brings in justice for them as well. And then we also have law stay away too. This is magic specifically designed to keep away the law authority figures. We're going to be talking a little bit about immigration in a little bit as well. And on the note of everything having two sides, so your candle, like the Come To Me candle, this doesn't have to always be used for love. You can use this to bring in business. You can use this to bring in friends. You can use this to bring in specific clients, things like that. This just creates situations for you to be together in the same space. So you can kind of go off book, off of what it's traditionally meant to be used for. As long as it makes sense in your brain, you're going to be able to use it that way. And then you have some that are sort of Catholic and sort of like a mix between like a saint and an intention. This is a most powerful hand. This one is used mostly for protection. It's supposed to signify the hand of God, which is going to be 5 specific saints, 1 for each finger, that creates the hand of God that you can be using. So there's literally a candle for everything. It's like apps, essentially. Okay, is this making sense? Are we following? Do we have any questions so far? All right, I'm going to move on just a little bit. We're going to talk about actually dressing and then blessing these candles next. That's where we're going to go. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to use the Law Stay Away candle, because I think this is work that needs to be kind of put out there more. I'm going to show you how I go about this. So the first thing you need to realize is that candles pick up all kinds of energy, which is great because we can use that to our advantage. But it also means that while this was being made in a very noisy factory or wherever they get made, and then they've been shipped, and then they've sat on a shelf in either like a botanica or a grocery store or a tienda, wherever you're going to find these, people have picked them up, people have walked past them, some lady was holding this and yelling at her children. It's got all kinds of vibes in it that you don't necessarily need in your spell work. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to cleanse it. Now, what I normally do, and you can do any sort of cleansing that makes sense to you. You can smoke this with herbs. You can use other kinds of waters. I'm going to show you how I do it. I keep a spray bottle full of Florida water, cut with a little bit of holy water. And essentially what I just do is I just spray this one down, and then I wipe it down, normally with a white cloth, but don't get too hung up on the details. Nothing's going to go wrong if you use like a red one. But I go in kind of like a downward fashion until it's dry. And as I do this, I have a conscious intention that I am cleansing it of energy. And I like the downward stroke because in my brain, I kind of see it as like a gauge, almost like a gas tank that's getting empty, is the idea. So I'm emptying the candle of everything else that it has come in contact with before it has come to me. So we're cleansed, everything is good. I'm going to take this down some more. So you're going to get your mortar and pestle, because those are important. And then you are also going to need let me see here. We're gonna want an oil, which I didn't grab, but that's fine. We're gonna get to that in a second. Okay, now the other thing that I keep around for my novena work is a screwdriver. This is a small screwdriver, and what we're gonna use this for is to make holes in the novena, in the top. You can use whatever you like. Some people use like barbecue skewers, some people use knitting needles, things like that. I like the screwdriver because it's not too big and it's very sturdy. Some of your different candles are going to have different levels of hardness. So some of these you might find that they're quite soft, so it goes through nice and easy. But sometimes you'll find one that's really super hard. And if you're using something like a knitting needle, you can bend it. But essentially what I'm going to start by doing is I'm just going to poke some holes in this. And the number doesn't really matter. If you're into like numerology or something and you know, you're thinking like, oh, well, 3 is a specific number for whatever, then you can do that. I'm not sure if you can see this super well, but basically I've just stabbed 3 holes in it. If you're in a hurry and you don't have like a screwdriver or anything, but you have like a fork, I've totally just stabbed these with a fork before. And this doesn't do anything for it magically. Basically, all this does is it creates an opening for the oil to go into, essentially. So what I'm going to be using for this, hold on. This is my never-ending shelf of issues here. Okay, so I'm going to use a St. Michael oil. You can use any kind of oil that goes with your intention. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by, I always shake up my oils just to kind of wake them up a little bit. And then we're going to put just a little bit in. Not too much. We want just enough to kind of just coat the surface of your novena. And then I kind of roll it around a little bit just to get it all over. And then if you spill over the side a little bit, that's fine. I got a little too much, so I'm going to take some out. Now, what's really important when we do this is to not overfill your novena. Excellent question, Sarah. Sarah wants to know if I make the oils myself or do I buy them? I personally make my own oils, but you can find them all over the place, which is an excellent thing for me to go over. Thank you for reminding me. So there's tons of different types of oils. You'll see them most of the time in these little bottles here. This is a Crown of Success. You can also find things like Road Opening, Prosperity. These ones here that I'm showing you are Lucky Mojo brand, which is the most common type that you'll find in most botanicas. I'm not a huge fan of Lucky Mojo as a company itself, but the products they put out aren't bad. So these ones are pretty good. A lot of the ones that you find at the Botanica, I'm not gonna lie, are total crap. They are scented and colored oil, and that's it. There's nothing else in it. What you do want to look for is when you turn this around, there's stuff in it. So if you're buying an oil from somebody that doesn't have anything in it, you're being scammed. These should always have stuff in them. They should kind of make sense if you can tell what they are. So there should always be some sort of herbs or roots or curio. If it's just like pink water with glitter in it, you are being scammed. Here's one that I've made. Here's the St. Michael oil that I'm using for this purposes. I'm using it because St. Michael is very protective. And so if I'm trying to keep the law away, I'm gonna want something that's very super protective here. You can also use, there is law stay away oil. You can use an invisibility oil if you want. You can also use like a court case oil if you want, or any sort of protection, firewall protection. But you can buy these all over. You can buy them from the Tarot Witchery. Ruth at the Tarot Witchery on Instagram, it's literally just at the Tarot Witchery. She sells them and they're amazing. Also, Madame Pamita from Madame Pamita's Parlor of Wonders also sells really amazing oils as well that I definitely recommend. If you want to go with Lucky Mojo, you can. Just do what you need to do. And yeah, and you can make your own oils if you want. So you can use all the different types. All right, so we have added our oil. And the one thing that I want you to, what kinds do you, so just as basics for the oils that we should have on hand, I always do like a protection oil, a blessing oil, also like a road opener oil. I go through a lot of road opener, as well as some form of crossing oil I like to keep on hand as well. You never know. So just kind of, you know, whenever you find yourself casting spells for a lot, those are the ones you're going to want to have on hand, essentially. Also an uncrossing oil as well. Because again, you never know. So one thing that I want you to really focus on when you're dressing your candle is to make sure you don't overfill it. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Okay, so you've stabbed holes in it. You've added your basic oil that goes with your intention of the candle through this. And then I bless at about every single step. So at this stage, I always make the sign of the cross over it, and then I bless it in the name of the Father, the Mother, and the Holy Spirits. You can do a pentagram over it. You can do a circle. You don't even have to do a hand motion, whatever works for you. So I'll do like in the name of the Father, the Mother, and the Holy Spirit. I bless and empower this candle here so that it keeps away the law from anyone who is currently vulnerable to it, who does not justly deserve the full force of the law coming down on them. May they be hidden and may they be protected from the sight of the law. I'm getting a pop-up from Zoom, but yay, okay. Anyway, so that's a way to bless your candle at this stage. And then from there, I set it aside, and then I bring out my mortar and my pestle. From there, I'm going to add herbs. Now, I always recommend that you mix up your herbs separately as a batch and then add them to your candle. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with fennel seeds, because fennel is really excellent for keeping away the law. So I'm just going to use a little bit in there, because remember, you're going to be adding a bunch of stuff to this, so I use just a little itty bitty bit in this. And again, I bless at every stage. I'm going to say, in the name of the Father, the Mother, and the Holy Spirit, I bless and I empower the fennel seeds here to keep away the law. May they not be allowed to come anywhere near me or any other vulnerable communities in our area at this time. Amen. And then I will give it a little crunch up. While I think about my intention, always think about your intention while you're crushing them up, and then I move on to my next thing. I'm gonna go through this kind of quick just for time's sake here. The next thing I'm adding is oregano. Oregano is really excellent for keeping away meddling individuals, people who aren't minding their business, nosy neighbors, narcs, immigration officials, things like that. Now, you can use lost stay away work for any sort of authority figure you want to keep away, whether it's your helicopter boss, et cetera, et cetera. I'm doing this one with an intention of protecting folks from immigration because I think this is work that needs to get out more, but you can use it for whatever you like. So again, I've added the oregano. I would then bless it, pray over it, etc. The next thing I would add is black mustard seed because that causes confusion. So I would add this in as a way for, because I like to add in backups. So for instance, if for some reason an officer or an authority figure got through the oregano and fennel sort of a thing and kind of entered into the territory of a vulnerable person, then the black mustard seed would be there as backup to maybe confuse them so that they wouldn't actually pick up on the fact that those people were there, or they wouldn't recognize, et cetera, et cetera. So I would add these through. And again, once it's added, I would bless it. Everything's cool. The very last thing I'm going to add to this is going to be some rue, because rue is extra protective. I really love rue. Rue is excellent at making a solid barrier, a wall of you do not go here. So then I would, of course, bless that as well. And I bless each one of these individually as I put them in. And as I do that, basically what I'm doing is I'm telling them what I want each individual one to bring to the table in this situation. Now, once this has all been mixed up, all of them have been individually blessed, then at the end, I do one last one over the whole mix about what I want this whole mix to do in general. So I've done what I want each of them, what each of their roles are going to be. Now here is what the big intention is, what we're all going to work together and make happen. Now, once we have that done, and see, even then, I don't have a whole lot going on in here. We just want a little bit. So then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to add it. And what you want to do is you want to try and avoid getting these directly onto the wick or on the base of the wick, because then we're just going to end up with a fire, and then you're going to have a bunch of black smoke and like crazy flames, and you're going to be like, oh my God, the devil is after me. But the devil is not, I promise you. Because sometimes we just create a fire and it's not Satan, I promise. Now, I'm going to show you, again, we're going to swirl this a little bit. This is how dressed my candle is, right? Not crazy. We don't want too much. And let's talk about this for a second. There is a thing that happens, particularly on Instagram, with Novena candles, where they're like, okay, so I'm going to pack it like up to here with some herbs and some oils, and then I'm going to light it on fire, and then it turns into a giant bonfire, and then we're going to tell everybody that we're really, really powerful because of that. That's not how this works at all. We have to remember it is a candle, it is not a pipe bomb. So we need to make sure that we are not overfilling them. Creating a bonfire in this is not going to make your spell any more powerful. What we're looking for, though, is intention. We are looking for blessing. We are looking for all those things, not a fire hazard. And especially, it's kind of a vanity thing, or becoming a vanity thing, to have your glass candles explode, because then, of course, that means you're super powerful. But that, again, that's not how this works. We don't want our glass candles to explode. They might, and that's something that we need to be aware of, but that's not the goal. That's not something we're trying to make happen. So really don't overfill these. A little bit goes a long way. That's all you need. Also, there's really no need to put glitter in these at all. That's something else that people really want to do. The only time I would use glitter is if I was doing a glamour spell, and even then, I like to use, especially for things like prosperity or glamour or things like, or luck, you can find pyrite sand. So pyrite is fool's gold. I did have some pyrite sand. Anyway, pyrite is fool's gold, and you can find it in itty bitty little pieces on like Amazon. And it comes in like a sand form. So it's very shiny. It's like glitter, but it's natural. It's not plastic. It's not going to get everywhere in your house. So I highly recommend that. If you want something shiny and bright in it, you can do that. For a lost AOA one, I probably wouldn't use that because that would just bring attention, and that's not what we're looking for. But okay, so we've stabbed our holes, we've put in our oil, we've made our herb mix that we've blessed, everything's cool, and then we've added it to our oil and our candle. Now, what I do, what I do now is I then do one final blessing where I'll go over it one last time just to kind of do everything up. So I'll be like, in the name of the Father, the Mother, and the Holy Spirit, I bless and empower this candle. May it keep the law away from vulnerable people who are not at fault, et cetera, et cetera. You go through it, you say your intentions, you say what you want done. And then what I do is I make this blessing a little bit longer. And so while I'm speaking and praying from the heart for what it is that I want, I will hold this and I will visualize it radiating with light. And the color of light depends on your situation. So for Lost AOA, I like to use blue, a really pretty blue light. And I use the visualization that it's so bright that no matter what color I'm using, the core of the candle is going to be white because it's so bright, and then as it kind of fades out to the color, if that makes sense. So it's like blue out here, but like it's so bright that it's white on this middle part here. And then while I'm doing that and while I'm praying my intentions, I sometimes picture like in that white spot, which is like in the center of the candle, sometimes I'll kind of visualize like a movie of what I want to happen happening. So like if I'm using like a love candle, I'll be saying my prayers while visualizing these two people coming together, and they're in love and they're holding hands and things like that. Or if I'm doing something like luck, I might use individual images. I might put pictures of like 4-leaf clovers or gold coins or things like that into it while I'm doing this final blessing. So I'll do my blessing and then I'll hold it and then I'll speak my intentions and I'll visualize it kind of coming into the candle and the candle radiating with the light of what it is that I'm doing. Then at the very end, what I do is while holding that image very clearly in my mind, I will then breathe a breath into it. And what that's going to do essentially is it's going to put life into the candle. So what we've done is using the oils and the herbs, we have created an energy signature that we have then filled with the energy of our intention as well. And then we've given it life. So essentially what we're doing is we're putting a spirit into this candle. You can make a spirit. And so what we've done is we've made kind of a little artificial spirit that we've put inside the candle, is the idea. And by breathing into it, we then put the life into it that it's needing. Now, once we do that, you are going to want to charge your candle. So we've constructed the spirit, it's alive, everything is good. So you're going to want to feed it, essentially. And you can do that a few ways. So sometimes people, if you have a sacred altar space, you can just set it on your altar space on top of like a petition paper if you want. You don't always have to use petition papers with these, but if you like petition papers, you can slide them underneath and set them on your sacred space to charge. You can also just let them sit in their oils and their herbs so that they kind of absorb that vibration. And then the other thing you can do, what I like to do, is I'll feed them with an incense. For most things, I'll use like a frankincense because frankincense is very high vibration. So I'll light up like a charcoal disc and put some frankincense on it, and then I'll hold it in the smoke until I feel like it's ready. Also, my altar closes up and it has these holes in it, so there's some ventilation and I can see inside. Sometimes I'll burn a bunch of frankincense in here so it's super smoky, and then I'll close it up and leave it in there for a while for it to kind of absorb. You can do however you like. You can charge it with prayers. You don't have to use frankincense. If you are doing a Come to Me candle and you have a Come to Me incense, you can feed it with that. However you want to do it. And if the feeding part doesn't make sense to you, you can completely skip it. If you're like, I've already blessed this thing 8 million times, it's good, you can also just go forward with that. Remember, everything should make sense to you. So if I'm telling you something, you're like, that doesn't make sense, skip it, go with what makes sense for you. And then you light them up and they're ready to go. Now, the art of doing a novena candle, the idea being that every day you are going to, every day that it's burning, you are going to come back to it and you're going to say prayers to it every single day. So this is something that you work on every day that you have it lit. Now, all of these usually come with a prayer in both English and in Spanish. You can use the prayer that it comes with, absolutely, or you can speak from the heart, or you can come to it and just hold your hands by it and redo the visualizations, whatever feels powerful to you, whatever makes sense for you. And that is basically how you get your candles dressed and get them started. Now I'm going to talk about divination and interpreting some of the signs that you're going to see. I'm going to get my notes here. So some things that you might run into. I'm going to run and grab a couple of example candles that I forgot real fast. One second. I'm coming. Okay. Hello. Okay, well, we have a question. List of herbs and their purposes and colors. Thanks so much. Okay, so we want to know how to find a comprehensive list of herbs and their purpose and the colors of candle. So the colors you can pretty much look up anywhere or just use your intuition. As far as the herbs go, let me grab a book. Okay, I'm missing one of them. So the #1 book that every witch needs to own is, I'll have to find it later, but it's Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs by Scott Cunningham. That is one that everybody should have a copy of. Also, this one is Hoodoo Herb and Root Magic by Catherine Ironwood. This is one that should be read alongside Cunningham's book because as Scott Cunningham is an amazing magician, he's also heavily and specifically Wiccan, which means that he has created a wonderful encyclopedia of all of the positive uses. However, Hoodoo doesn't play by those rules so much, so this is kind of the other side of the herbs that you might want to look at as well. So I would definitely read both of them at the same time for your herbs. The candles, or the colors are going to be kind of specific to each individual, or you can just kind of Google that. The other one that you might want to pick up is, if you can see it, this is kind of a terrible copy and my Wi-Fi is a little grainy, but this is The Magical Power of the Saints by Ray T. Marlborough. And this one, it talks about the saints, but it also talks a lot about novena candles. It also talks about ancestors and working with those as well. So I highly recommend getting this one. Again, it's The Magical Power of the Saints by Reverend Ray T. Marlborough. It's pretty good. Okay, so how do we read the glass once it's been burned? That's something that we're going to look into. So the first thing that we want to talk about is signs during the burn. So as it's going, you might notice that your wick does weird things. First thing that the most common thing that I see is that the wick will form a knot. It'll be going all fine, and then it will kind of just turn into like this giant, huge, like tumor lump thing on your wick. And you're going to have to sort of adjust your interpretation of these things to the intention of the candle. A lot of the times when I see a knot form, that to me it says it's an obstacle that the candle is trying to work through. I see these a lot on road openers. So basically that states, hey, yes, there is an obstacle here, but we are working on it, is what the candle's trying to tell you. Now, where it happens in the burn can also indicate where the challenge might lie. So if it happens right away, then that means it's an immediate obstacle. It's something that you're probably already aware of. It's something that it's just like already running into early on. If it happens down here, then that might mean that like, okay, cool, like the road is open. However, like further along, there might be an obstacle that we've detected, and now we're working on that one. And so as you go along your journey later on, you might be like, oh, there's kind of this bump in the road, but it's fine. That's because that was probably maybe like a major obstacle that got worn down by your magic ahead of time. So that would be knots. I see knots as obstacles, things like that. And sometimes your knots can get really smoky too as they work through them, but eventually your candle will kind of break it up, and sometimes they kind of like explode. Not your candle, but the knots kind of like pop apart, and sometimes they just kind of, the flame just kind of wears them down, and then it moves back onto a normal burn. Now a big flame from your wick, not from a bonfire that you've created, a big flame in there means intensive energy, like intense energy is being used on this. And especially if it burns fast, that's telling you to expect quick but not long-term results. Which sometimes, like if I'm doing like a blockbuster candle with one of these, is exactly what I want to see. Now, if you have a small flame, that's not always a bad thing. If it's a slow burn with a small flame that's like a steady flame, but small, then that's fine. That just means that your results might be slow, but last longer. So there's not necessarily a bad one and a good one. People think that like, oh, if my flame is small, it's not working. It can mean that you maybe didn't feed it enough, or there wasn't enough energy put into it, or it just means that, like, you know, for this purpose, this one needs to go slow, and this one needs to take its time, especially with things like love work and whatnot. It's not a bad sign to see a small, slow flame. I was going to say something, and now it's gone. I'll come back to that if I think of it. If you have a noisy flame, if it's crackling, popping, sputtering, or hissing, sometimes they'll whistle too. Again, it depends on kind of the intention of your candle. If we're doing, say, if this was a saint's candle that's making noise, I would take that as a sign that the saint is trying to communicate to you, is trying to say something to you, or a lot of Catholic folk will take that as a sign that the saint is pleading your case on your behalf to God. So that's one way to look at it. However, if this is a candle that I'm using to bind somebody or a bad spirit or something, and it's hissing and spitting and popping, then that means that it is mad as hell that I am trying to do that. And that is fine. They can be mad as long as they're getting it wrapped up. So sometimes that means that they are fighting back or angry or things like that, and that is okay. It's just your candle's way of letting you know that that's happening. Okay, I think so far that is all for the during the burn part. Now after the burn, let's talk about smoky candles. Again, it's going to depend on what is happening and what your intention is. So some of these get really dark. I'm hoping you can see this. So the first thing you want to notice is how far down on the glass does the black go. So on this one, the black goes down to about here, which is a little less than halfway. About here is halfway. If the black goes down more than halfway, then that means you're going to need to do it again, or it just means that this one is a no-go. However, if you just have a little bit of black, then that doesn't mean that your candle is not working. Essentially, what the black is in reference to is that there is something spiritual and energetic that is in the way. There is either a blockage, or there is maybe someone's brujeria that is getting in the way, or maybe you just need a cleansing, is essentially what it's talking about. It's just talking about astral crap that is causing issues. So whenever I see black, I always recommend that people do a cleansing on themselves. If it's just a little bit of black, I'm like, yeah, do a spiritual bath, but overall, we're going to call this one a success. But you might need to smudge your house, or do a cleansing bath, or do some cord cutting or things like that. So this is just letting you know. Now, remember, there are no bad signs. It's simply information. So people get like a little bit of black and they're like, the spirits are angry with me, I'm going to die. No, that's not what's happening at all. It's just letting you know, hey, this is something you should be aware of. Now, if there's like a bunch of black on this, and again, depending on the situation. So if I'm doing a cleansing candle or a road opener or a blockbuster, I'm going to be okay with seeing some black because I'm going to expect it, because we're removing nastiness. And this is like, yep, there was some nastiness, we got it removed. That's what it's saying. Whenever there's the black smoke, that's what's happening, is it's showing you that the negativity is being removed. But if you have so much black smoke that it spent its entire time removing it, like if this whole thing was black, then that means that your candle didn't have time to bring in, cash, as this candle says, because it was too busy trying to cleanse your crap. So this is telling you that you need to cleanse it and then try again so that it can do that. Now, if I was doing like a love candle, or I guess in this case, a cash candle, or something where I wasn't necessarily removing negativity or removing a block, and I saw some black smoke, I would be a little bit more worried than if I was doing like a road opener, because those things shouldn't have nasty negativity hanging out around them, and if they do, it needs to be addressed. Now, if you're doing something like a cleansing candle, and you get black all the way, then you can either continue to burn more cleansing candles until they burn clear, or what I would recommend is to be a bit more proactive and just go through and cleanse your house, cleanse yourself, all the things. Is this making sense? Let me know in the chat if we are. Where am I going next here with this? Okay, cool. Now, the other thing that you might find is that the smoke might be uneven. You might have like a lot of black smoke here, and then it's kind of clear over here, and then more black smoke down here. What that's letting us know is that is that the energies are shifting. They are moving, which is good. We want that. So if I have black smoke, I like to see it uneven because that means that it's moving. It is, something's happening with it. It's being either shoved aside or it's being transmuted. It means that there are things in motion. So that's not a bad sign. Now, the other thing that we have here is another issue about, there's different kinds of smoke. So there's black smoke and then there's white smoke. Now, white smoke is a really good sign. The only thing better than a completely clear, clean, burned candle is white smoke. White smoke is a definite yes. This is the support of spirits, angels, higher beings, the divine, etc. This is them letting you know they have your back. That's a very good sign. Now, if each and every single one of your candles doesn't have it, that is totally fine. They are still working. And that's something that is important to remember when doing your divination, is that we're simply looking for information. We need to have confidence and faith in our work, because that is how all of this works, is based on faith and confidence. So if every time our candle does something weird or strange and we're going, oh my gosh, it's not working, then it probably won't, because we need to have faith. So I want you not to take any of these signs as being bad signs. It's just information. Your candle is just giving you feedback. Now, something to notice with white smoke is there's two different things. There's something called, there's white smoke, and then there's something called clouding. Now, the difference is that white smoke is, of course, smoke or like soot that is a layer on the inside that is white. Now, clouding is a very thin layer of wax that is stuck to the inside of the glass, and they look pretty much exactly the same. Now, the way that you find out is you can stick your finger in it and kind of like rub the inside, and if like the smoke comes off, it'll clear a patch, and that lets you know that it's white smoke. If it doesn't do that and it feels kind of, you know, waxy on the inside, then that's clouding. And what clouding is trying to tell you, even though it looks pretty much exactly like this, and it's not white smoke, what clouding is trying to tell you is that there's something that you're not seeing clearly. Either there's something about the situation that you're not understanding, there's something maybe you don't know, or that you're not, of course, seeing clearly. It also might mean that there is an opportunity that you're missing. This is a steady work candle here, and so if this was if this was clouded and not white smoke, and it was a steady work, it might mean you know, you have a friend who is looking to try and hire somebody that you haven't, you know, put two and two together. There's an opportunity, or maybe that degree you got years ago that you haven't thought about, you know, is going to come into play, or things like that. It's telling you just to kind of look around and open your eyes and make sure that you're truly understanding and seeing everything the way that it's supposed to be. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is rings. And second to last thing I want to talk about is rings. So sometimes you'll be burning these, and you'll see little rings form down it. And sometimes they'll be all the way around unbroken, and then there will be rings that are broken. And what these tend to be are units of time. This is your candle trying to tell you how long you may have to wait for this to happen. So if it has 3 rings that you can see, then that's telling you that the time you'll have to wait is a unit of 3. So that might be 3 days, it might be 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. It depends on the situation. Like if you're like, I'm burning this candle because I need $10, it might be like 3 hours. If you're like, I'm burning this because I need to be the president of the United States, it might be like, okay, there's got to be some stuff that needs to be happening here, so you're going to have to wait probably 3 years, you know. Now, if when it comes to the broken rings are going to be a possible length of time. So let's talk about this. Say we have 3 complete rings and 2 broken rings. that means we're going to definitely have to we're going to have to wait for a unit of 3 and possibly 5. So say it's like, okay, I need a promotion. It's saying 3 to 5 months. It's saying definitely 3, maybe up to 5. Does that make sense? We'll see, hopefully. And also, if this glass reading part is going too fast or there's a whole lot, we read candles a little bit differently, but on YouTube, Hoodoo Delish has a really great video for glass reading. She splits hers up a little bit different than mine and takes some things as a different sign. But all in all, we read them basically the same. So if you want to have another video to look at, again, you can go on to Hoodoo Delish on YouTube, and she has a great one. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about is wax left in the bottom. So if you have a candle that burns down but leaves wax in the bottom, now this is a really extreme case of that. And this actually had nothing to do with the magic part. I actually had this at night when I go to bed. I place my Novena candles in a big stock pot, a metal stock pot. And on this case, it was a cold night and I had put a little bit of water in. And so basically this wax was just in cold water and therefore it didn't melt. But if you burn a Novena and there's still some wax left in the bottom, you can see that like on this one too, if we have wax left in the bottom. What that is simply telling you is that you need to be doing something in the physical world in order to activate the magic of this candle. So say, we did the steady work candle and say that there was wax left in the bottom. What this is telling you is like, yes, the steady work can be yours, but you got to apply for a job, or like, a reconciliation candle, like, absolutely, this is going to work, but you have to call them, So this is, if there's wax left in the bottom, it's saying that you need to make moves in the physical world in order to get this magic to start going and to come to fruition. So that is basically covering the signs you might see. A broken or an exploding candle. It does happen. And again, you're going to need to define that based off of what the intention of the candle is. If you are doing a protection candle and it explodes, then that often means that it has taken a hit for you that somebody sent. It's kind of like jumped in front of you and taken it for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've broken through your protection and have gotten to you, but it means that this candle was toasted because of it. And even though it doesn't mean that necessarily it's broken through your shields and their work has gotten to you, it still means somebody is throwing for you rather hard, and you're going to need to then use more protection than just a novena. Novenas can do very powerful work, but they're not going to be the end-all, be-all, most powerful magic. These are kind of like, on a scale from 1 to 10, these are about like a 6 or a 7, versus like a full ritual with all the things and all the bells and whistles would be like a 10. These are going to be ones that, these are very relaxed magic, just to kind of throw around every day, to be using, whatnot. So yeah, so there's that. The other things that breaking or an exploding candle might mean is that there is a breakthrough, which is good, or it can mean that your target is fighting back. So if I'm doing like a binding on somebody with a novena, and maybe it's like hissing and spitting, and I'm like, that's fine, you can be mad about it, I'm still binding you. But then if my candle breaks, then that means that I'm going to have to use something stronger because they have busted through whatever binding I'm trying to use. So again, you have to take into consideration the intent of your novena with what signs you're seeing. Trying to think of what else to tell you guys about. Always be safe with your novenas. You can put these out when you leave or when you go to bed. Absolutely, the magic is still going to work. If you come along the next day and you light them up, you can burn them in small increments over 7 days. You don't have to just burn it up and leave it for 7 days, or however many it's going to burn. So if you do want 7 specifically, I would burn it a little bit every day for 7 days, and that totally works. I have other candles too, where where I'll just light them up if I'm doing, say, like another like a ritual with like a candle spell and like all this stuff, like a usual not novena specific one. I'll still use novenas that I light up just during the ritual. So like I'll use something like Power Boost or Protection or something like that, and I will light those up, do my candle spell ritual, and once my little candles have all burned down, then I'll snuff this and I'll put it away until next time I need it. Or if I'm doing like a money spell, I'll light this one in the background as kind of just like supportive energy for my ritual, you know. So don't feel like you have to always light them and then let them burn until they're gone. You can use them little bits at a time. For my saints and stuff, I will light them up, say my prayers to them, give my offerings, and then I'll snuff them until the next time I want to go talk to that saint. So you can really get creative with these. Don't feel like you have to always use them a very specific way. And of course, always be really safe with them. I put them in a big metal stock pot at night, or if I need to leave the house, I will put them in one of those as well, or I'll set them on my stove. You can put them in your sink or in your bathtub. Watch out for your shower curtain, but kind of anywhere that's like a non-flammable container with water nearby is going to be a way to go. Don't burn your house down. Just don't do it. It's a bad day. Do we have any questions about things? I'm trying to think if there's anything I have left out other than making weird faces at the screen. How do I dispose of the candle? So right now, my current disposal method is I have started to collect these on my windowsill in my living room. I kind of started doing that by accident. I just kind of like started putting them there like, oh, these are kind of cute. And now I have a ton of them on there because I'm still not completely sure what to do with them. Something that I do like to do is I'll take the used ones and I'll fill them with like either like beans or popcorn or rice or something like that. And then you can use them to hold your incense sticks. So I'll do that with these so that the ash gets all caught and you're not burning things down or whatnot. So I'll just set them in there. And that's something I'm trying to figure out ways to sort of upcycle them. I believe it's Readings and Rituals on Instagram found a cork online that you can buy that's this size. And she turns hers into bottles now that she corks and like fills them with herbs and things, which I think is going to be a game changer for my space because they don't take up much room, but they're tall. So that might be something you can do. I think you can recycle them. I'm not sure, depending on your area. Where I live, they don't have glass recycling. But in your area, they might take them. I know sometimes they're finicky about which ones they'll take. But you can do all kinds of things. I don't recommend burying them. I know that's like a really big, like modern witch thing, but it's just going to stay there for millions of years, and I don't think that's a great idea. But I mean, to each their own. If your spell calls for it and you need to do it, you do what you need to do. Okay, so is it true that it's better to snuff candles versus blowing them out? Yes and no. It's kind of a witch culture thing that we try to observe. People try and put some really heavy stuff on it, like if you blow out the candle, then the spirits will come for you and you'll die, or whatever. I wouldn't be too freaked out about it. I do like to snuff them just because I feel like it's a little bit more gentler, and it's just kind of like a tradition thing that I like to observe. If you blow it out, do I think that your spell is not going to work, or that the spirits are going to be angry, or that you've offended so-and-so? No, I don't. For me personally, I do like to snuff them. I just feel like it's more gentler. I feel like it's more respectful. And I like to pay homage to sort of like witch culture and tradition that way, but otherwise, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Other people will definitely disagree with me on that, but you gotta be semi-realistic with your witchcraft. Sometimes you're gonna need to blow it out. I've blown out candles before and nothing terrible has happened. So yeah, so don't be afraid. And some spells require you to blow the candle out as part of the spell, but that's something else completely different and not necessarily novena related. Anything else? Anything else we got? I'm watching my chat thing. Okay, I think that's everything. If you guys realize that you have, thank you guys for coming, yes. If you guys find that you have questions later, feel free to DM me, or if you are watching this recording later and you didn't get a chance to ask your questions yourself, feel free to send me a message. And yeah, that should pretty much cover it. So thank you guys for being here. If you also want a copy of this recording, let me know. I'm going to try and then take this recording, and I think I'm going to have to put it up on YouTube and then send it to you. We'll find out. Anyway, wish me luck. Me and technology is not always a thing. Me and candles, yes. Me and technology, not so much. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Bye.